Bonjour, voici vidéo 11C sur les phrases complexes. Complex sentences are simply sentences that are composed of more than just a subject and a verb. And we have already seen several different types of sentences combined with our relative pronouns in French. And so today we will be reviewing complex sentences with relative pronouns. We've already studied qui and que. Those were in chapter 3. And we studied ou and we studied donc. And remember that these help us link phrases and sentences together so that we can speak more, basically in a more complex manner, not sounding so much like how little kids would talk by saying simple sentences. We can combine our thoughts into more complex sentences when we use qui, que, ou, and donc. If you remember, qui can be used as a subject, but it can also be talking about a person. It's the subject of the second clause. Que can also be that, translated as that, and it is the object of the second clause. Ou is where, and donc is when qui or que could work, but you have the preposition de hanging around at the end, like using the verb parler de, to talk about something. And you don't want that about, that de, hanging at the end of the sentence, so you're going to use donc instead to incorporate that de. So verbal expressions with de are when we're going to use donc, or when we want to say whose. Sometimes it doesn't have a de with the verb, but we want to express the idea of whose, and then we will use donc as well. Let's look at exercise E, exercice E, à la page 166. 166. These sentences are about visiting a site in France where there are war monuments and talking about other things like that with the Prussian army, which was the German army. All right, let's look what we need. Qui, que, ou, or donc. Le général, numéro 1, le général commandait l'armée prussienne s'appelait Motzke. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but the general who commanded the Prussian army was named Motzke or whatever. So what do we need there? In that second phrase, commander l'armée prussienne, we don't have a subject, so we need qui. Le général qui commandait, the general who commanded the army. Numéro 2, cette guerre, blank, parle d'Odet, et la guerre franco-allemande. At the end of this chapter, you'll have a fairly long story by Alphonse Daudet. This author wrote about this particular war, this Franco-Allemande war, which we call the Franco-Prussian War, I believe. All right, so cette guerre, and we have the verb parler. And so we want to incorporate the fact that we have he was talking about it, right? We have an about hanging around there, although we don't see it. We know it's there because that verb parler implies that they were talking about something. So we've got to use donc here. Cette guerre dont Daudet parle est la guerre franco-allemande. The war about which Daudet was speaking, or that he talked about in English, was the Franco-Prussian War. 3. Verdun est une ville. De nombreuses batailles ont eu lieu. Verdun is a city where many battles took place. Ont eu lieu is to take place. In past tense, took place. So I gave that one away because the only thing that fits is where, right? It's the city where a lot of battles took place. So you want où. 4. Napoléon, blank, a reculé devant l'armée russe, était vaincu. Napoleon, and then we have he retreated before the Russian army and was conquered or defeated. So Napoleon, and we have a reculé. Don't have a subject in that second section, so we're going to have to use qui, right? Napoleon, who was, I'm sorry, who retreated? Who retreated before the army, right? Numéro 5. La ville, les soldats protégés, ne s'est pas rendue. The city that the soldiers were protecting did not surrender. Did not surrender. So in that second little phrase there, we have les soldats protégés. We've got a subject, les soldats. So we don't need qui, we need que here, don't we? The city that the soldiers protected did not surrender. Numéro 6. Nous pouvons visiter le sous-marin. On a parlé. We can visit the submarine about which they spoke, or that they talked about. That's what we would say in English. But we can't have that de hanging there in French, so we're going to get dont. Pretty much if you see parler in these types of sentences, you're going to have to use dont. If the meaning is to talk about, you're going to have to use dont. So that was, we can visit the submarine about which they spoke. 7. Le port, nous avons vu les vaisseaux de guerre, est entouré de canons. So the port, we saw a blank, we saw the warships was surrounded by cannons. What makes sense there? That's another good place for ooh, isn't it? The port where we saw the warships. Et numéro 8. La France rend hommage aux soldats blank sont morts pour la liberté. France gives honor to soldiers who died for liberty. So what makes sense there? We've got sont morts, no subject in that second clause. That's what determines what we choose. So we're going to have to use qui. No subject, so we need a qui. France honors the soldiers who died for liberty. Okay, so that is a quick review for qui, que, dont, and où, and you'll have more exercises in your workbook. If you've got questions, of course, as always, give me a call or email me. Happy to answer questions at any time. And that's the end of 11C. Au revoir.